Assalamu alaikum dear students. My today's topic is cause of downward sloping demand curve. Dear students, I have taught you earlier the law of demand. The law of demand states that other things remaining constant, quantity demand of a commodity increase with fall in price and diminishes with rise in price. Now we will study here why does demand curve slope downwards from left to right. The reason for this also clarifies the working of law of demand. The main reason for the downward sloping of a demand curve, or number one, law of diminishing marginal utility. The law of demand is based on the law of diminishing marginal utility. According to this law, when a consumer buys more units of a commodity, the marginal utility of that commodity continues to decline. Therefore, the consumer will buy more units of that commodity only when its price falls. Here you can see when price falls from P1 to P2, the quantity demand increases from OQ to OQ2. So with the decrease in price, the quantity demand increases. This proves that the demand will be more. This proves that the demand will be more at lower price, and it will be less. It will be less at higher price. It will be less at higher price. This is why the demand curve slopes downwards. Now, second point here is the price effect. Second point here is price effect. See, every commodity has certain consumers, but when its price falls, new consumers start consuming it. As a result, demand increases. On the contrary, with the increase in the price of the product, many consumers will either reduce or stop its consumption, and the demand will be reduced. This is due to the price effect. When the consumer consumes more or less of the commodity, the demand curve slopes downward. And the third point here is income effect. What is income effect? Income effect refers to change in quantity demanded when real income of the buyer change as a result of change in price of the commodity. See, when the price of the commodity falls, the real income of the consumer increases because he has to spend less in order to buy the same quantity. On the contrary, with the rise in price of the commodity, the real income of the consumer falls. This is called income effect. Under the influence of this effect, with the fall in the price of the commodity, the consumer buys more of it and also spends a portion of the increased income in buying other commodities. For instance, with the fall in the price of the milk, it, he will buy more of it, but at the same time, he will increase the demand for other commodities. On the other hand, with the increase in the price of the milk, he will reduce its demand. The income effect of change in the price of the ordinary commodities being positive, the demand curve slopes downwards. Another point here is substitution effect. Substitution effect refers to substitution of one commodity for the other when it becomes relatively cheaper. See, the other effects the other effect of change in the price of the commodity is the substitution effect. With the fall in the price of the commodity, the price of substitutes remaining the same, the consumer will buy more of this commodity rather than the substitute. As a result, the demand will increase. On the contrary, with the rise in the price of the commodity, its demand will fall given the price of the substitutes. For instance, uh, with the fall in the price of the tea, the price of the coffee being unchanged, the demand for tea will rise, and contrariwise, with the increase in the price of the tea, its demand will fall. So this is the substitution effect. And number fifth is different uses. See, there are different use of certain commodities and services that are responsible for the negative sloping of a demand curve. With the increase in the price of such products, they will be used only for more important use and their demand will fall. On the contrary, with the fall in price, they will be put to various uses and their demand will rise. For instance, with the increase in the electricity charges, power will be used primarily for domestic lighting. But if the charges are reduced, people will use power for cooking, fans, heat, etc. There are also certain exceptions to the law of demand. There are also certain exceptions to the law of demand. Uh, in certain cases, the demand curve slope slopes up from left to right. The demand curve slopes up from left to right. That means it has a positive slope. It has a positive slope. Under certain circumstances, consumer buy more when the price of the commodity rise. When the price of the commodity rise, consumer buy more and less when the price falls, as shown by the D in this demand curve. See, many causes are attributed to an upward sloping demand curve. Number one is war. If a shortage is feared in anticipation of war, people may start buying for building stocks for hoarding even when the price rises. In that case, the demand curve slope upwards. Another exception to the law of demand is depression. During a depression, the prices of the commodities are very low and the demand for them is also less. This is because of the lack of purchasing power with consumers. The third exception to the law of demand is Giffen paradox. See, if a commodity happens to be a necessity of life, like wheat, and its price goes up, consumers are forced to curtail the consumption of more expensive foods like meat and fish and wheat. And wheat being still the cheapest, they will consume more of it. The Marshall example is applicable to developed economies. In the case of underdeveloped economy, with the fall in the price of an inferior commodity like maize, consumers will start consuming more of the superior commodity like wheat. As a result, the demand for maize will fall. This is why the Marshall called Giffen paradox. This is what the Marshall called Giffen paradox, which makes the demand curve to have a positive slope. Another exception to the law of demand is demonstration effect. See, if the consumers are affected by the principle of conspicuous consumption or demonstration effect, they will like to buy more of those commodities which confer distinction on the possessor when their price rise. When their prices rise. On the other hand, with the fall in the price of such articles, their demand falls, as is the case with diamonds. Diamonds have more demand because their prices are abnormally high. It's so because distinction is bestowed on diamonds by the society because of their being costly. Accordingly, their demand is also high. If their prices fall, they will no longer be considered as article of distinction and so their demand will decrease. See, another exception to the law of demand is ignorance effect. Consumers buy more at a higher price under the influence of ignorance effect, where a commodity may be mistaken for some other commodity due to its price, deceptive packing, label, etc. See, Sometimes, out of ignorance, the consumer feels that the good is worth less if its price is low. Accordingly, they buy less of it at a low price. More is purchased only if the price is high. In this case, also, the demand curve slopes upwards. These are some of the exceptions to the law of demand. Thank you very much.